So now, brothers and sisters, we get a better understanding of heaven. We have the heavens of heavens. We have water, a huge mass, vast body of water above space. You can't see it, but it's there. Then we have the second heaven, or the heaven, the firmament that is below that body of waters. Now we have one, because Paul said there's three. We have one left, and that is the earth, brothers and sisters. Earth is also referred to as heaven in the Bible. Again, you must understand this simple thing if you want to have understanding of Scripture. It's just that simple. Deuteronomy, the 30th chapter and the first verse. This is talking about how Israel, who is a black people that have been scattered throughout the nations of the earth, scattered into the four corners of the earth by way of slavery. Even here in the United States, they would be referred to as the so-called African American. The only people who don't have a clue of who they are. That's who Israel actually is. That's why in Deuteronomy, the 32nd chapter, he says, I will make the name of them to cease from among men. Men will forget who they are. Not just other nations, but Israel. That's a terrible curse, but that was one of the curses that was placed upon Israel for disobedience. The remembrance of them to cease from among men. So it says in verse 1 of chapter 30 in Deuteronomy, and it shall come to pass, when all these things are come upon thee, the blessing and the curse, which I have set before thee, and thou shalt call them to mind among all the nations, whither the Lord thy God hath driven thee, and shall return unto the Lord thy God, and shall obey his voice according to all that I command thee this day, thou and thy children with all thine heart, and with all thy soul. See, what's going to happen is, this people is going to be restored. We are not going to be on the bottom forever. We will not be a snare and a laughing stock. We will not be something to gaze at in awe forever. That's not going to happen. The Lord is going to redeem us. Now, it won't come from man. God is going to redeem his people. In verse 3, then, when we turn to him, turn back to him, and it's starting now. 3, that then the Lord thy God will turn thy captivity and have compassion upon thee, and will return and gather thee from all the nations, whither the Lord thy God has scattered thee. See, he scattered us into the Americas. He scattered us all over Europe. He scattered us even into Asia and the so-called Middle East and all over Africa. He's going to gather us. See, the deliverance from Egypt, Scripture says, won't even be mentioned. But what's going to be mentioned is how he gathered us from north, south, east, and west. How he gathered us from all the nations. That same kind of deliverance is on the horizon. So it says, that then the Lord thy God will turn thy captivity and have compassion upon thee, and will return and gather thee from all the nations, whither the Lord thy God hath scattered thee. If any of thine be driven out unto the outmost parts of heaven, from thence will the Lord thy God gather thee, and from thence will he fetch thee. Now what heaven is this referring to? Is it talking about the heaven of heavens where the Father and the Son is? Is it talking about the heaven where the birds and the plains are, where Elijah and even Philip was taken to? Or is it talking about where we were scattered on the earth? It's talking about the earth, brothers and sisters, but it's referred to as heaven. It uses the word heaven. So we really need to understand this. It's critical that we understand this, because we can misunderstand big premises in the Bible if we don't understand simple, small things. And this is a simple, small thing that confuses a lot of people. So I'll read it again. If any of them be driven out unto the outmost parts of heaven, from thence will the Lord thy God gather thee, and from thence will he fetch thee. Now let's go to Matthew the 24th chapter and look at this. Because this is in Matthew the 24th chapter, the disciples asked a question. They asked this question. They say, and as he sat, talking about he's talking about Jesus, and as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? Okay, so first thing he tells them, and Jesus answered and said unto them, take heed that no man deceive you. He first warns of deception. I'm going to skip, because first of all, you need to read this on your own. But there is so much deception in the world. So many false prophets. So many false Christs. People who claim to be Christ and people who claim to speak for Christ. But you shall know them by their fruits. That's how you know. So you need to get an understanding of the word and what it's saying. And then you can listen to the words that's coming out of a minister, and then that's how you tell whether he's a liar or not. But let's go down to the 29th verse. I'm going to skip down here because he talks about all these signs. It's going to be famines, pestilence, earthquakes and diseases. Pestilence all over the landscape, false prophets. And then you're going to see the abomination of desolation standing in the holy place. What does that mean? You're going to see the Pope of Rome, not necessarily Pope Benedict, but one in the office of Pope, stand in the temple that will be built, that there are plans to build in Jerusalem. Then he says for you to flee. Then it's going to be great tribulation. The great tribulation is going to last for 3.5 years. Verse 29 reads, immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened. The moon shall not give a light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. Now, and then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. So, people are going to be able to see what heaven is this. He said, you know, roll the sky like a scroll. The heaven's like a scroll. That's talking about the sky and the atmosphere. That stuff is going to be rolled back. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn. And they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he shall send his angels with the great sound of a trumpet. And they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. See, this is talking about the regathering of Israel. That's his elect. And they're going to be regathered. We are going to be gathered from the four winds of heaven, from everywhere we've been scattered. From the north, south, east, and west portions of the entire earth. But he calls it heaven. And this is what you read about this, what Moses wrote. Okay, I'm just talking about heaven. Let's go to another place. Let's go to another place. Because this is in Isaiah the 14th chapter. Because we really need to understand how things work and operate. Because there are a lot of realms. There is a physical realm, and we can see things with our physical eyes. And then there is a spiritual realm. There are things going on a spiritual level that most people have not a clue about. They just think that what happens on the physical just happens by happenstance. It just happens. And that's the so-called luck of the draw. When they don't understand what's going on behind the scenes. And if you don't understand Scripture, you don't understand